So here's fun. I've been meaning to get around to ranking all the God of War bosses for the better part of 2 years now. It keeps being pushed back on the priorities list, but let me assure you that it will eventually happen. With that said, I had a wild idea that encapsulates not just most every boss in God of War, but every named character that Kratos kills. Because throughout the entire series, he's ran the gamut between sympathetic and monstrous, fighting people who ran the gamut from monstrous to sympathetic. So I thought I'd take a look at almost every named character that Kratos kills and give them a ranking out of 10 based on how much they deserved it. Keep in mind, just because someone needed to die for one reason or another, that does not mean they deserved it. And also keep in mind that we're working off the base level of someone like Ares being the absolute worst of the worst. So some people might get a lower ranking accordingly. Also, this is just, my opinion. So we start off the 20-year anniversary of God of War with this. Starting chronologically, we have starting off with the most innocent of all the innocent bystanders in the series, we have Lysandra and Calliope, the wife and daughter of Kratos, who were caught in the line of fire when Ares tricked Kratos into killing them. He had no intention to kill them, no reason. They were complete cannon fodder in the quest of Ares to make Kratos the strongest warrior. So innocent and undeserving of death, in fact, that it's the very thing that caused Kratos to turn face. Castor and Pollux, otherwise known as the Gemini twins, weren't responsible for what happened to the Oracle of Delphi, Aletheia, but they were certainly complicit in her tortures. Not only that, but they were actively going out of their way to antagonize Kratos, as all he was wanting to do was just try to seek counsel with the Oracle and ask her what to do. Every bit of aggression towards them was their own doing, as Kratos was seemingly totally content coexisting with them, so yes, they absolutely asked for it, in both for their unnecessary aggression and their insistence on siding with the Furies in torturing the Oracle. Aletheia didn't deserve it. Absolutely didn't deserve it. Her crime was attempting to go against Ares and the Furies. She was locked up in her own temple, and really her death was as a direct result of a fight that had nothing to do with her. Technically it wasn't Kratos who did her in, but he did in fact play a large part. Truly an unfortunate existence. I battled back and forth between calling the Furies 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, because if Ares is a 10 out of 10, it's really hard to get to that level of devious. With that said, the Furies colluded with Ares to try and destroy Olympus. So even then they deserved such a fate, and then when Kratos refused to be their puppet, they captured him and tortured him for weeks. So they absolutely deserved to die, but did they deserve to die quite as much as Ares? I would say not quite to that extent, but definitely in the ballpark. Orcos was a tragic soul, the Oath Keeper and the last living connection that Kratos had between himself and Ares. So in that respect, he didn't deserve to die. He was totally innocent, but the reason why he's a 4 out of 10 instead of a 1 or 2 is simply the fact that he asked Kratos to do it. It was a mercy killing if anything, and that's what puts it slightly higher than it would be otherwise. It was a decision by Orcos and Orcos alone. Is it fair to judge someone based off the old adage, it was a different time? Because the Persian king in Chains of Olympus is having his armies ransack the city of Attica. Not exactly something that gets you put on a lot of people's Christmas card lists, but it's also something that was more or less just expected of kings in those days. You needed to pillage and ransack in order to increase your own power. So he was just doing what was expected of him, so he definitely got what was coming to him for ransacking a city and probably not being a good leader to begin with, but he comes across as more average for the time. So let's be honest, nobody likes to kill animals. Actually, let me rephrase that. Nobody I have any level of respect for likes to kill animals. But there are certain circumstances in which you kind of don't have a choice, and that's what it comes down to for a lot of non-intelligent named beings in God of War that you have to kill. Sucks that you have to do it, but you don't have a choice, and that's why they probably all universally count as a 5 out of 10, because it's absolutely self-defense, but it's only self-defense on account of these creatures being feral and not anything that has to do with free will. Now Charon, and I finally know how to pronounce that name, is another character who can be classified under the blanket heading of just doing his job. So that brings him down a few notches, but there are a few things in regards to his characterization that makes him more deserving of what was coming to him. First of all, yes, he wasn't supposed to take Kratos across the river Styx because Kratos was still alive, but an exception really should have been made because this was a potential existential threat to everyone, including Charon. We didn't know yet that Persephone's plan involved destroying all of creation, but at this point we knew that the surface world was asleep, the gods were incapacitated, and Helios was captured. So an exception really should have been able to be made. Really, it was just malicious compliance that left Kratos forced to fight Charon. Second of all, he threw Kratos into Tartarus. You didn't need to do that. That was just spite at that point. Like, broski, bro, chum. I know you feel like you're a slave to the gods, but Kratos has nothing to do with that. So being spiteful towards him isn't going to solve any of your problems. Honestly, he's kind of lucky that Kratos killed him because had he not died and the gods found out that he actively tried to keep them all asleep, death would be the thing he'd be begging for by the time they get through with him. So through a combination of malicious compliance, pointless spitefulness, and a refusal to acknowledge how dire the situation was, Charon was necessary to kill and he definitely deserved it. Persephone is a 10 out of 10 in multiple ways. In fact, she's arguably, from a functional standpoint, one of the characters in the series most deserving of death. Why? Because she is rightfully resentful of the fact that she's forced to be the wife of Hades for half the year, but teaming up with Atlas to try and destroy all of existence to get out of that arrangement? That's a bit of an overreaction if you ask me. Aphrodite and Hephaestus are in a loveless marriage, and you know what they did? They just put a portal connecting Hephaestus's cavern and Aphrodite's bedroom. Couldn't you have just, done that? Really, killing her was the most altruistic thing that Kratos ever did. Yet another named character that's simply a feral animal that we have to put down for our own protection. As such, it gets the same rating as the others. The boat captain is the running joke of the series. He's referenced in near enough every single game. The joke of the whole thing being that Kratos has every opportunity to rescue him from being inside the Hydra King, but Kratos instead takes his key and throws him into the Hydra's stomach, killing him. There's been various accounts and attempts to explain why Kratos did this, both in canon and out of canon. Like the idea that Kratos had no respect for him because he was a coward who ran instead of fighting. Or there's also an ever-present rumor that he was trafficking women and Kratos has no love for him. But ultimately, the final explanation came in Valhalla when Kratos admitted that he had no reason for being as spiteful as he was. Is he as innocent as Kratos' family, though? Well, in fairness, the boat captain did cower when he could have at least attempted to run away. So the fact that he was in this situation at all is partially his own fault, which means he did deserve it, at least a little bit, but not much. So, you guys want to know how Medusa got cursed to have a head full of snakes in Greek mythology? She had sex with Poseidon in Athena's temple, and instead of getting mad at Poseidon, she took her wrath out on Medusa herself, cursing her so that anybody who gazes upon her will turn to stone. God of War does take a lot of liberties with Greek mythology, so it's entirely possible that it isn't canon to the God of War series, just as Medusa is actually killed by Kratos in the series as opposed to Perseus like in actual Greek mythology. In any case, on account of no contradicting evidence, we can assume this is why she's part of the armies of Ares. Because she deserved her pound of flesh. As a result, she may be working against the people we're allied with, but Medusa, more than anyone, has a justified axe to grind against Athena and therefore Athens. Which is why she's a boss fight that definitely does not deserve death. She's not completely innocent as she is responsible for hurting innocent people in Athens, but at least she is no less justified than Kratos. I feel bad for Pandora's Guardian. The thing gets saddled with protecting Pandora's box for gods know how many years and basically has to die for the eventual retriever of the box to get it. What a sad existence that is, but at the same time, it's still feral and it still attacked us, so through the magic of self-defense, it gets the same as the other feral creatures. I mean, what is there to say about Ares that hasn't been said a million times? He is the definition of somebody who deserves death. Aside from ransacking Athens for reasons, he also went out of his way to screw over Kratos multiple times throughout his life, and is directly responsible for the death of his family. Like, this dude couldn't have possibly been asking for it any more than he was. He even killed Kratos at one point. Everything that happened to Ares was in response to what Ares did, so there's no slight ambiguity that he got what was coming to him. Callisto, almost more so than Lysandra and Calliope, didn't deserve to die. It really is a fight to the bottom, and it's all down to personal interpretation, but she was cursed by Zeus to turn into a horrific monster if she ever tried to tell Kratos who his father was. That is definitely just unnecessary levels of dickery, and at that point, Kratos is basically forced to put down his own dear mother for her own good. Truly an absolutely innocent bystander in the whole situation whose only sin was who she brought to bed. So apparently that kraken-like creature that attacks you at the beginning of Ghost of Sparta has a name, and it's Scylla, but it's another feral animal, so moving on. So Erinys, daughter of Thanatos, was tasked with trying to get Kratos to stop looking for his brother, and she did so in the absolute worst way possible, by killing his Spartan brethren. There's a bit of push and pull as to whether or not Kratos was doing the right thing in looking for his brother, but she tried to stop him by killing Spartans. That's literally the opposite of what you should be doing in that situation, because all that would do is make Kratos righteously indignant. Another feral animal, moving on. I didn't even remember this guy, the Dissenter, existed. In the jails of Sparta, you encounter this guy, and is apparently loyal to Ares to such an extent that he hates Kratos and actively tries to kill him by releasing the Piraeus lion, and even in death remains loyal to Ares. Dude tried to square up to a god and got stomped out, so like, he was asking for it by the end. Now, we didn't directly kill Deimos, but we did beat the hell out of him and probably directly led to his death on account of the fact that he was greatly weakened by the time Thanatos got his hands on him. So whatever, it's an excuse to talk smack about Kratos killing his family again. Deimos was yet another person who was caught in a bad situation, taken away by the gods out of a fear of their own destruction. Held in captivity for multiple years until Kratos finally came to rescue him, at which point he got violent. And the fact that he fought his own brother is the only reason why he's not a 0 out of 10. He was asking for it slightly because he didn't even give his own brother the benefit of the doubt. Still, definitely an innocent bystander in what would eventually become Kratos' fight. Taking a man's flesh and blood, holding him captive for multiple years, and then killing him when said person's brother has the goal to come break him free. Thanatos may have just been a servant to the gods, but if there's one thing you do not mess with, it's a man's family. The only reason why he's not higher up is simply because he's not exactly high on the totem pole in the grand scheme of things. So while he could have theoretically resisted, he probably would have been punished. And besides, we also killed his daughter. But he definitely relished in what he was doing and didn't even attempt to resist or question anything he was doing. It's tough to judge a game like this where there's barely any game to speak of, but Syrinx, son of Hermes, was merely sent to try and stop Kratos in his pursuit of the assassin that killed Hera's pet Argos. Like, he was sent in. So at the end of the day, he didn't necessarily want this, but he was still following orders and still tried to kill Kratos. My sweet god Prometheus is such a tragic case in the myths. He sculpted humans out of clay and then dared to gain affection for humans. So when he wanted to help humans by giving them fire, Zeus then cursed Prometheus to be tied to a rock forevermore, each day having his liver devoured by an eagle, and then to have his liver regenerate by the time the next day came around. When we see Prometheus in this case, he's in the midst of that suffering, and we take some form of pity on him by knocking him into the fire pit, ending his existence, but also giving us the power of Rage of the Titans. I'm assuming that the context behind him being tied to the rock is the same as it was in the myths, but that just tells me that he did not deserve what he got. He was not totally innocent, which means he's not a 0 out of 10, but the crime certainly didn't match the punishment, and his death is almost merciful. The Dark Rider, to my knowledge, is one of the few characters in this game that doesn't actually show up in Greek mythology. He's entirely original. And from what I can tell, he's just the leader of the 47th Airborne Griffin Division protecting the Island of Creation. And as such, him protecting the island is just him doing his job. But he has no grand personality beyond simply doing his job, so whatever context may exist that puts him further up or down doesn't exist. So a nice 6 out of 10 is comfortable. Theseus is a character who has something rare: respect. He understood what Kratos was doing, but wasn't vindictive about it. He simply challenged Kratos to a duel to the death to see who was more powerful. While he was working with Zeus and the Fates, he didn't seem nearly as committed as the others. I guess it's slightly up in the air as to whether he stayed dead given the time travel plot, but, well, either way, 5 out of 10. They've made it no secret at this point that the barbarian king originally needed to die for the sake of Sparta's safety, so him dying the first time was absolutely warranted. However, this is the second time. He's been revived by the Sisters of Fate and is put in front of Kratos as his next obstacle. Ironically, the fate of Sparta also rests in his hands in a weird way. You know, because we're trying to undo the fact that Zeus destroyed it. For his past transgressions and the fact that he gave up his own free will and sided with the Fates just to have another chance at Kratos, I would say this is a justified fight. I don't know why Mol Cerberus is a named character, but still, the thing is in our way and we need to get the Golden Fleece to move on. I'm rating this one as slightly lower than the other feral creatures because Kratos is the antagonist in this situation, going after the creature that has the Golden Fleece. And fun fact, that means that this creature canonically killed Jason of Jason and the Argonauts fame, which all things considered was a slightly more dignified end than what he got in the actual myths. In case you don't know, after losing everything due to breaking a vow to his wife, Jason died alone and unloved when he was crushed by the stem of his own ship. So I had misremembered Uriel as being the innocent party in this situation, so I was prepared to give her an even lower score than Medusa because I thought Kratos was the aggressor. But then I remembered, right, she's trying to basically kill Kratos to gain favor with the gods. So this can partially be blamed on self-defense. Oh, Perseus, it didn't have to end like this. The initial issue that Perseus has with Kratos is on account of the fact that Kratos didn't hold the door open for him, so now they're both trapped in this room, and then Perseus for some reason decides that he's going to use this opportunity to appease the gods by killing Kratos. Perseus, my friend, you are literally just a mortal being going up against a guy who's killed multiple gods. So really, he had no reason to antagonize Kratos in this case. He could have simply just stepped aside or, gods forbid, help him find a way out of this place, but no, dick measuring contest it is. If he simply stepped aside, would the gods be mad at Perseus? Maybe, but at least he would have taken a risk instead of walking straight into certain death dick first. Legitimately, Icarus went out of his way to antagonize Kratos in this situation. Kratos seems like he was fully willing to let Icarus do his own thing. At most, he probably wanted some help, but then Icarus kept poking the bear and poking the bear and poking the bear until Kratos basically decided screw it, and not only threw them both down into the depths of the underworld, but also ripped off the wings of Icarus out of spite. If he didn't poke the bear would not need to shoot him in the face. This is a mixed metaphor. The death of the last Spartan is about as big of a misunderstanding as you could possibly have. Kratos walks into a darkened room and some mysterious figure starts fighting him. So naturally, you need to fight back, and then you launch him out of a window and realize he's the ally that you sent back to Sparta at the beginning of the game, and now he's considered the last Spartan because Sparta is no more. And he was trying to come here to get to the Sisters of Fate to alter history. Ultimately, his death was a pure mistake and nothing more than a good-hearted man that praised Kratos even in death. He's among the most innocent people in the series. Another feral animal who left us no choice. Next. It takes a special kind of villain to get a 10 out of 10 and not be Ares or Zeus. Oh, spoilers. In this case, how do you get that? Well, attempting to stop Kratos from changing history is one thing, but actively trying to erase his existence? That's pretty messed up. Especially seeing as erasing his existence might also have unforeseen consequences as far as the existence of Olympus post-God of War 1. But that's a bit theoretical. With that said, do I think they deserve 10 out of 10 status? Arguably, but not really. Because Kratos was the aggressor, a justified aggressor, but an aggressor nonetheless. Because they were colluding with the guy who screwed Kratos and ultimately killed him, so he deserves retribution for them doing so, and also for not getting out of the way when the time came for justice to be served. Athena got in the way figuratively and literally, but with that said, I don't believe that Kratos had any intention of killing her, and I also don't think that she had any intention of killing Kratos. Merely stepping in the way to prevent the death of Zeus, and in the end, her death was a complete and total accident when she just stepped in the way of a deadly stab. So she didn't deserve it, other than the fact that she got involved with a fight that arguably didn't concern her. She was always just trying to keep the peace, unless you buy into the theory that I posed about the idea that the entire series was a long and intricate game of chess that she played, but that's only a theory that really shouldn't be taken too seriously. Reddit. So Poseidon. He died because he bet on the wrong horse and decided to choose his brother, but also he had every reason to choose his brother. And I'm also a little bit torn on this one because, like, yeah, he's trying to kill you, but is what Kratos is doing outweighed by the fact that Kratos destroyed Atlantis? Can Poseidon really be blamed in this situation? Like, yeah, this is self-defense, but I think it's hard to deny that Poseidon kind of deserves his pound of flesh. As far as gods being total dick blisters, he's not really guilty of anything to warrant this other than fighting a battle that was thrust upon him. With that said, my score is subject to change depending on one thing. How much of a hand Poseidon had in the Deimos situation, because based on that game it seems like it was primarily Zeus, Athena, and Ares doing all that. And if Poseidon had a personal hand in kidnapping Deimos, then you can say that Kratos had a bit more justification in destroying Atlantis to get to Deimos, and then you can bump the score up by 2 points. Otherwise, I think Poseidon is comparatively innocent. Perithous is an enigmatic figure in God of War 3 because he just happened to be in the underworld on a throne of bramble. Whatever he did to put himself in that situation, it's probably an epic tale, and him in his current predicament is probably his own fault. With that said, Kratos has literally no reason to kill him. He was offering the very thing that Kratos killed him for. And there was probably a very easy way to solve this situation without being completely and utterly spiteful for no reason. To me, this is the first indication that Kratos has lost it and he's now a monster worse than the very person he's fighting against. So with Hades, I feel like he's more warranted in what's coming to him compared to Poseidon, because at the very least it's been well established that if Kratos dies, his soul will be punished by Hades for all eternity. So he clearly has some ulterior motives in this situation. It's funny too, because they bring Persephone into it and try to establish that Hades has an axe to grind because Kratos killed Persephone. But shouldn't they realize that Persephone was trying to destroy all of existence? If anything, Hades is more to blame for the death of Persephone for forcing her to marry him. I mean, I guess the gods were asleep, but did nobody ask what happened while they were asleep? Did they assume that Kratos killed Persephone for no reason? And if that's the case, they deserve to die for their ignorance. But yeah, between the base level of dickishness as gods and his desire to torture Kratos for daring to be the god of war that they asked him to be, Hades is pretty up there. Helios would have been a lot lower had he practiced any level of self-preservation. I guess we don't necessarily know for sure if Kratos would have spared Helios if he had just surrendered. Probably not, but Helios could have practiced at least some form of self-preservation. First of all, by not trying to attack Kratos. Second of all, by not trying to blind him. Third of all, not lying to him about the flames surrounding Pandora's box. And fourth of all, trying to gaslight him after he reveals that he knows Helios is lying. Dude did everything wrong in this situation, so him getting his head ripped off was practically inevitable. Perseus, not to be confused with Perseus. Now, if you don't remember who this character is, I don't blame you, because I often forget that he's in the game, and I also often forget that he dies. Here's the sitch. At one point, Kratos is coming up from the underworld to Olympus and just decides, seemingly out of pure spite, to kill the crap out of this titan who did nothing bad to him and, as a matter of fact, was actually vital in killing Helios. But I guess no stone unturned and all that. I mean, sure, Perseus takes a swing, but like, what's he gonna do? It's like a blackout drunk person trying to fight you at the bar. They pose no actual threat to you. You can just walk away or, I don't know, tip them over. So he's probably the most innocent person out of all the Titans, even if he was helping destroy Olympus, but lest we forget, Olympus deserved it. Hermes is much like Helios in that if he had just practiced some form of self-preservation, he might have been able to survive. Kratos goes out of his way to say that Hermes isn't worth his time, yet Hermes decides to poke the bear and poke the bear and poke the bear until Kratos finally decides, you know what, screw you, and drops a statue on him. I guess the fact is, deserving to die is somewhat of a spectrum, in that some people deserve to die for the sake of retribution, some people deserve to die for the sake of saving someone, and some people deserve to die just because they see a bear holding a shotgun and think, it would be fun to kick him in the balls. Hercules is yet another person who could easily have survived if he had just practiced some god-given self-preservation. Kratos didn't want to fight him, but Hercules left him no choice. Note, technically it should be Heracles because this is Greek mythology, not Roman mythology. But anyways, he could have just easily stepped aside, but Hercules had an axe to grind over the fact that Zeus favored Kratos in their various machinations, so Hercules wants to prove that he's better than Kratos by beating him. Which is at least some justification that makes him a little justified, but only a little bit. Poseidon's princess is such an uncomfortable scene, but it's also one of my favorite scenes for the storytelling because throughout the game, you gradually get the sense that we've stopped being justified in our actions and are now descending into monstrosity. Some may claim this is a weakness of the story, but I actually think it's a strength. And the turning point is Poseidon's princess when we basically force her to hold open a gate and she gets crushed in the cogs. She is as innocent a bystander as you could possibly get. Her only crime was being in the line of fire. Okay, so Kronos gets mad at Kratos for things that weren't entirely his fault or were just him retaliating against other people. Then he tried to use his overwhelming size advantage to kill Kratos. Then he demands mercy when Kratos gets the better of him. Sorry buddy, that's not how that works. You started this fight, now Kratos ends it. I guess there's a point to be made about how Kronos only fought Kratos because he assumed that he had an overwhelming advantage, but at some point into a rampage, you gotta just start giving this guy whatever he wants without question, because even if you want to kill him really badly, some fights just aren't worth the struggle. Hephaestus is a bit of a tragic figure because his only sin was being a loving father. This dude rolls up to his keep and says, "Hey, so your boss is a bit of a dick and screwed both of us over, and I want to kill him? Okay, cool. But I'm gonna need to kill your daughter to do so. Yeah, that's not very cash money of you." With that said, however, Hephaestus did try to kill Kratos, so there is an element of self-defense here, but then again, there's also an argument that Kratos didn't have to kill Hephaestus. because, you know, he could have just walked away after electrocuting him, because he was clearly stunned in that moment. So this one's a bit nuanced, but justified as he may have been, he wasn't totally innocent. Man, if she just kept her mouth shut. That seems to be a recurring theme throughout all of God of War 3. People who refuse to keep their mouth shut, and as such, Kratos killed them for naught but spite. I feel like there's a bit of push and pull with Hera because she was suffering at the hands of the destruction that Kratos wrought, and she also posed absolutely no credible threat to Kratos to the point where he was trying to walk away, but ultimately she made one too many snide remarks about Pandora, whom by this point Kratos had already accepted as his surrogate daughter, and he gave her one good neck snap, and that was that. So she's among the gods that screwed with Kratos. She was definitely egging him on, but she didn't deserve to die nearly as much as the likes of Hermes, because quite frankly, it was just sad to see what became of her by the end. Daedalus really was just a victim of circumstance. He designed the labyrinth and was destroyed by his own creation. What a harsh reality that is. Essentially, he was crushed to death when the labyrinth was reformed. But really, I mean, Kratos could have just cut him down before forming the labyrinth. So he was screwed on multiple fronts. So that's a bit of a sad existence, but that's life, I suppose. This is another case of someone needing to die, not necessarily meaning they deserve to die. Pandora shouldn't have had to die because she was just an innocent, very weird-looking child. She launched into it with gusto because she wanted to help you along, but that doesn't mean that she deserved what she got. So the only thing that holds Gaia back in this instant is the fact that she is Mother Nature, and her world is being bled dry because of the actions of Kratos. So yeah, she does have good reasons to be mad, and she wants to kill Kratos and Zeus, but with that said, she got a lot less justified in the fact that she betrayed Kratos and let him fall to what might have been his death, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, he fell into the river Styx, so draw your own conclusions. But either way, she spent an entire game trying to recruit him to her cause, and then she turned around and screwed with him in the end. So whatever justification she might have had as far as getting revenge on Kratos for destroying the world, Kratos deserves his pound of flesh on account of her betrayal. So yeah, she definitely deserved the cardiac puncture wound that Kratos gave her. Who deserved what was coming to them more, Zeus or Ares? Because a good case can be made for both of them. Either way, they're both pretty equal. If he had only killed Kratos out of fear of his own demise, that wouldn't be so bad, but aside from that, he spent a good chunk of Kratos' life antagonizing our pasty white boy, cursing his mother, which led to her death, ordering the capture of his brother, which led to his death, leading him on for 10 years only to pull the rug out from under him at the last moment and refuse him the one thing he wanted. He then turned around and forced him into a position on Mount Olympus that he didn't ask for, and in an erased reality even destroyed Sparta out of pure spite just because Kratos refused to bend the knee. Ultimately, what little self-defense that Zeus can claim is completely and utterly outdrawn by all the times he screwed with Kratos in one way or another. Zeus absolutely deserved what was coming to him. Once again, we have to make the distinction between needing to die and deserving to die. Mimir was made to suffer countless tortures at the hands of Odin and his lackeys for the sin of allegedly aiding the giants and Tyr. And as a result, he saw death and resurrection as his only reprieve. So no, he didn't deserve to die. Not one slight bit. Okay, technically only Magni was killed by Kratos, and Modi was beaten to a bloody pulp by Thor and then finished off by Atreus, but let's just bundle them together anyway. Because they're sort of a package deal, both in being the male sons of Thor and coming as a package deal generally. I don't believe they really deserved their demise all that much because ultimately they knew not what they did. What pushes them past what would initially be a 4 out of 10 was their insistence on systematically torturing Mimir, and the fact that they more or less enjoyed what they were doing, but the collective score is brought down by the fact that Modi did the smart thing and ran when he saw his brother being killed by Kratos, and ultimately after that, he was relatively innocent and his death was as a result of Thor punishing his cowardice and beating him to near death. He didn't have to die, that's just the way the chips fell in the end. This character, whose name I refuse to even begin to pronounce, was the Bridgekeeper of Helheim, and we needed his heart to save Atreus. So I mean, he didn't do anything to us, and he didn't deserve what came to him. He was just kind of a necessary aspect of us saving Atreus, but I don't know, he probably did something to deserve it. Baldur was a man of pure conviction, pure spite, and pure anger towards his mother. Not even necessarily towards Kratos. His beef with Kratos had to do with the fact that he was ordered to find the Guardian of Jotunheim, and he mistook Kratos for the Guardian. However, his death was purely on account of the fact that Kratos gave him every opportunity to be the bigger man and walk away, and he still refused, deciding to attempt to kill his mother even after Baldur had gotten what he wanted, and that was his immortality taken away from him. So Kratos decided shan't and put an end to his insolence. His score largely boils down to being given every opportunity to be better and refusing. The Valkyries, I don't know, 2 out of 10, they didn't deserve what they got, but they needed to die to be free from their possession, and it's honestly a mystery to me how many of them actually died, and how many of them were eventually brought back in some form or fashion. I can probably easily look it up, but I can't be asked. I'm not sure how feral the Huntress is, but nonetheless, she was nothing more than a means to an end. Alva? Who even is that? I don't remember. Yet another feral monster who was in the way of our ultimate goal. Next. This little guy, while feral and aggressive, was more or less just an innocent bystander in the rampage of Heimdall. So it's a bit more unfortunate than most feral animals that he had to be put down, but that's just the nature of the beast sometimes. I maintain that Heimdall should have been the final boss in a hypothetical second game in a Norse mythology God of War trilogy. Because think about it, you kill Heimdall, which proves that Ragnarok is inevitable, and the final twist of the game is the death of Brock, which leads Atreus and Kratos to walk away from the battle, which is the thing that takes place over the credits. I think it makes sense. That's mostly because Heimdall is a better villain than Odin himself. The complete slime ball who antagonizes everyone and is a complete son of a bitch to Atreus even when he's ostensibly an ally. It's said that Heimdall is essentially fated to kill Atreus, so Kratos had every reason to take the first shot, and once again, like Baldur, the final nail that pushes him over the edge as a 10 out of 10 is the fact that he refused to submit even after getting his arm blown off. He left Kratos absolutely no choice but to kill him. I mean, Surtur's death was a means to an end, both in his original form as well as the Ragnarok monster, so it's not like he deserved it, but he was unfortunately necessary. There's just no other way. As per usual, when it comes to minions, it's unfortunate that Hurst and Mist died because they were merely following orders, but if those orders that they're following involve killing me, then of course, you're gonna die. Once again, we didn't actually kill Thor, but we did exponential damage to him. The only thing we didn't deliver was the final blow. Up to that moment, immediately preceding his death, he probably would have been a 9 out of 10 on this list. But in the final moments of his life, he decided he wanted to be better and set a better example for his only remaining child. And refusing to follow Odin's orders was what led to his death immediately after. And as such, he didn't really deserve it. He deserved to have the chance at redemption, but it was taken from him by the big man himself. Speaking of, Odin was a tough nut to crack because he was seemingly entirely reasonable for a lot of the game, but that was obviously a facade of reasonability to get what he wanted. He did a lot of horrible things, he enabled a lot of horrible people, held the 9 realms under his thumb, and while we didn't necessarily see the worst of what he did, we did see a lot of it, including the death of Brock. He had the chance to repent, but in the end, chose not to. And once again, we weren't the ones to deliver the final blow, but, well, as before, we did most of the work. If I was a more spiteful person, I'd rank Gná as much higher simply because her boss fight was a pain in the ass that took me like 3 hours to beat. But really, she's another person whose biggest sin was betting on the wrong horse. She chose to be the new Valkyrie queen after Freya freed herself and decided to fight on the wrong side of history. Ultimately, she's given the choice to repent after she's defeated, but Gná insists that Kratos and Freya finish her off. Not the most deserving person in the game, but, you know, not innocent either. Alright, well I think that's every named character that Kratos kills. I didn't write an outro to this video, so I guess I'll just say what I always say. If you like this video and want to support the channel, you can like this video, leave a comment telling me what you think, subscribe, and hit the notification icon so you're always up to date on what I'm doing. And if you want to support the channel in a more direct fashion, you can pledge to my Patreon for unique perks and rewards such as early access, Discord benefits, and exclusive content along with these fine folks right here. And an extra special thank you to Dick Kickham, Hydra Overlord, FarmCat84, Raph, Ranger X, Sphinx, Will Stokes, and Weird Webster for going above and beyond. Elsewise than that, I've been the King of Snark Style right here on Tactical Bacon Productions, and I will see you next time. Stay crispy, my friends.
You